let me just say that as I'm looking around this room, I see a beautiful sight. And I invite you to do the same thing. Look around the room, look at the people sitting next to you, and remember this moment. You want to breathe it in. And you want to think about this in the future, because this is really, to me, this is one of the most exciting experiences you can have. Now you might be looking at me right now and saying, Paul, we're at UTSA in a conference room. We're going to spend the day here. You know, how can it be that beautiful? And I'd respond to you that the thing that makes this room just, and this day, amazing is that it's filled with you. It's filled with people who are on the verge of becoming entrepreneurs or who have already taken the leap of faith to become entrepreneurs. So what is an entrepreneur? To me, an entrepreneur is somebody who's brave enough to act on a vision they have for the future. An entrepreneur is the person that gets to actually create the future that all of us live in. So what that means is sitting beside you today are people who are going to build your future. So that's pretty fantastic when you think about the things that impact your life and to know that they were all built by individuals like the individuals in this room. Now, the only possible complication is that it is within the realm of possibility that people are already looking at you with that kind of look in their eye. Like, what are you talking about? This thing takes money. Where are you going to get the money to launch a business? This thing takes time. Where are you going to get the time to work on this project? What are you going to do? Are you going to leave your job? Are you going to take time off school to build this company of yours? You have an idea in your head which is crystal clear, but you walk into Corey's office or somebody else's office and try to explain it to them. Sometimes that vision you have, it's hard to get across to somebody else. And so there's this possible complication. You have a vision, but will you reach it? And there's an implication to the decision you're going to make, because perhaps you quit your job and emptied your 401k and, well, I guess that was us. But you quit your job, emptied your 401k, and there are naysayers that are out there that you will meet along this journey. And if you listen to them and worry about what they tell you, I can guarantee you that you will fail. And if you fail, given all that you gave up to take this chance, well, that's not so good. So what do? And here's my position on it. And I'm a Texan and sometimes kind of talk like a Texan. And at Latakoo, we think like Texans, I think, which is this. I have a saying. If you really want to do something, the best way to do it is to do it. You just got to get out there. You got to make a move, and you got to take a chance. And so today I want you to consider our story. My co-founder, Jade Curian, is here with me. But in essence, I think our story is potentially your story in the sense that it requires of all of you to take a leap of faith that this vision of yours that you have right now can actually become a reality. And as John Burroughs said, leap and the net will appear. That's what you have to do as an entrepreneur. You have to believe so fervently that you can build something that you don't worry about not having a net. And the benefit, I can guarantee you, is success. You will succeed. That's not a promise that this vision of a company that you have today will actually be the company that you build. I can't guarantee that. And to remove that risk is sort of to defeat the purpose of taking a leap, right? But what I can guarantee you is that the first company you will build successfully is basically yourself incorporated. That becoming an entrepreneur, the greatest reward you have, and one that I realize every single day going down this road, is that you will be more independent than you've ever been before. You will be freer than you've ever been before. You will be liberated. You will have the opportunity to become the person that you were meant to be. This comes by taking a fantastic chance. Becoming an entrepreneur, you get the chance to become the person that you were meant to be, and that's pretty cool. So I want to talk about Latakoo. I'm going to talk about a few main points that I'd like you to think about. Feel free to interrupt me because this is a discussion, and more than anything, I want to provide information that helps you. And so the first thing I want to talk about is basically making the break from safety, because there is, I think, an overwhelming desire for most people to do what's safe over what is risky. And that's why most people, when they graduate from school, the first thing they go do is get a job that pays them enough to pay for their apartment, their food, their insurance, all the things that you need to do to live in life. And what you do is you put off doing the thing you want to do until you can afford it. And if you keep doing that, for most people, you're retired before you can afford it. So it's a dangerous thing to do. I was a journalist. I was a television journalist for 2 decades. My co-founder, Jake Curian, was a journalist as well for about 2 decades. And as a journalist, looked a lot different than I look now. I did the TV newsman thing, which means short hair, serious look, tie. I loved the job. I was fanatic about journalism and the importance of journalism, but I also did so in a corporate environment, which means I worked for very large corporations. And to a certain extent, I had to abide by their rules, which means not every story I ever wanted to do did I pursue. Not every story that I reported got on the air. The industry itself started to change underneath my feet, underneath the feet of everybody who's a practicing journalist today or who has been doing journalism over the last 5 or 10 years, because that industry itself, the business model stopped working as well as it had worked in the past. Because you think about journalism in the past, big television stations, big newspapers, they were the game in town for advertising. So everybody who wanted to advertise to a mass market had one place to go, television and or the newspaper. And as we all know, that's not the case anymore. And so the revenue declines as folks start spending money in places like the internet. And as the revenue declined, those big corporations reacted the way big corporations always react, which is to cut cost. And the cost in a corporation like that is basically journalists. And so as you reduce, you have less people to do the job, which I felt was so important for democracy, basically. And so for years, I started thinking about what you ought to be able to do, which is to go out and create a company that could produce content of the level that's needed in society. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it until something changed in my life. And the thing that changed in my life was a little baby girl that came into our family, Lark. And when my child was born, it became crystal clear to me that if I'm going to work, spending 8, 9, 10 hours a day at the office, away from her, then it better be important what I'm doing. It better be, the thing that's going to change the world. And I do believe journalism changes the world. But as soon as little Lark came into the world, it became crystal clear to me that this was the time to make the break. Because what I was doing there, while important, it wasn't fulfilling the potential that I believed that I had as a contributor to the world. It goes back to this entrepreneurial thing. What can you do to contribute? And what you do is you have vision, and you build, and you create, and you change the world. And so the gift that Lark gave me was the gift of clarity. And so we made the decision. Jade is not only my co-founder, but my wife, made the decision to leave this career, go back to school, and try to create a business. And so the next point I want you to think about is your first inspiration. The company you see, the company that you may be envisioning right now, isn't necessarily, if you're successful, the company that you're going to build, right? And so here's what happened with our journey is Had this job in Dallas, Texas, working at a television station, quit the job. Went back to school, spent a year at Harvard in the Kennedy School. Our family, Jade continued to work in Dallas with our child, so we split the family apart for a few months. This is a fairly large sacrifice for us. During this year in school, worked on building the initial plan for our company. What would it look like? What was the business model? How would we actually make money producing journalism that would support the business and keep it going into the future? Because in essence, no matter what you want to do, the first rule is you've got to make more money than you spend. If you don't exist, right? And so we spent an enormous amount of time building the team, building the concept, building the initial infrastructure, which involved a lot of internet work as well. You might imagine what it was like going out and trying to raise funds for this company. In essence, I was making a pitch for people to invest in a for-profit company that fed an industry that was, I told them, in market failure. I'm telling folks journalism's a market failure, invest in me because I'm going to create a journalism company. That was a difficult pitch. We kept making it because we were crazy passionate about it and we believed it was important. Along the way, as we're trying to build this company, we ran into an infrastructure challenge that I hadn't anticipated when I walked off my job. And the infrastructure challenge was, since we came from a television background, we shot everything in high-definition video. And of course, we didn't think like bloggers or people who write text. We weren't print journalists, so we thought in terms of video. Anything we would do would require large video files. And the thing about video is, as it gets better and better and better, the files get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it turns out that physically moving a file from one place to another, well, that's not so easy. And we had this vision of a distributed workforce. And by that, I didn't envision a building in downtown San Antonio where reporters would come, start their day, and end their days like traditional mainstream media still does for most of the time. We envisioned a workforce where you'd have reporters all over the state of Texas, and they would send content to us. That's exactly where we ran into a problem, because we wanted somebody in El Paso and somebody in Laredo, and we wanted them to send the content to our hub, which would be in, say, Austin, and then we wanted to redistribute the content. But it turned out there was nothing out there that we could find, new technology-wise, that made it easy to take this video and send it from one location to the other. Internet seems like an obvious place, but guess what? When we tried to upload a minute or two of video to the internet, it would take an hour or 2 hours. And that's not so hot when you're on deadline. And so we started working on this problem that we had. We could have used old technology. The television stations for which we worked for all those years used and still primarily use old technology. And by old technology, I mean trucks, satellite trucks, microwave trucks, such. But that cost a whole lot. And when you're a little bitty startup, it doesn't make much sense to be budgeting $500,000 for a truck and then spending all this money for satellite time. So we couldn't do that. We could have used older technology. Jade Kurian worked before Latakoo for 5 years for a startup venture for a company out of New York, Cablevision company. They started this company called HD News. They traveled the world doing high-definition news stories before most other companies were doing it. And the deadline that Jade had every day typically was, well, the FedEx drop, because they didn't have a good, efficient way, even working for a very big television station that had invested hundreds of millions of dollars, to deliver those high-definition videotapes back to New York where they were edited in stories. And so basically what Jade and her photographer would do is work till the end of the day, go to the nearest FedEx drop, mail the tapes. So you have a situation where you can use old technology that's very expensive, or you can mail tapes. And still today, there are many, many, many video production companies that when they have something that they need to ship to somebody else when it comes to video, the way they ship it is they put it on a hard drive. They don't use the internet. They put it on a hard drive, call FedEx, and they mail the hard drive or the jump drive to their clients, whoever they're sending the video to. So there was, even in this world of great connectedness, a very large problem. And we had this problem as a little journalism company. And so we started working on this problem for ourselves because we didn't know how we would ever, get this content we were producing from one point to another. And as we worked on the problem, and as we solved the problem for ourselves by using technology in a different way than others were using it, we realized that that was actually a better company. That was a company that there was a need for. Yeah, we needed it, but so did all those other television stations. So do all those video production stations, companies. So does anybody that has a large video file. You need a way to move video from one point to another. And so we pivoted. So we set out, left our jobs, went to school, did all of this stuff to build a journalism company, and then along the way to that destination, pivoted and said, after all, we're not a journalist, content-producing company. What we need to be, because there is a need in the market, is we need to produce a service that we can sell that makes it easy to move large files from one place to another place, to deliver these large files. And if we can do this, our social mission is still intact, because who do we sell it to first? We sell it to the journalism industry. And so by providing a more efficient, less costly way of moving content, high-quality content around, we actually are doing exactly what we set out to do, which is supporting journalism, which we thought was very important. So that would be the second thing I'd point out to you, is that understand that you have a great vision today. I believe you have a great vision today for the companies that you will build, but it's not necessarily, if you succeed, the company you're going to end up with. And as an entrepreneur, what you have to do is figure out, really, what were you meant to build, and also, where is the market? Because again, ultimately, your ability to successfully build a company depends on your ability to make more money than you spend. And as a journalism company, we weren't sure we could do that. But as a tech company, not only did we convince ourselves that we had the ability to make more money than we would spend, but we could convince others. And since making the switch, we have successfully raised, we have a new investor coming in, University of Texas, and when their investment arrives, we will have raised in the last 2 years just under $2 million, $1.8 million, which has supported the development and creation of this company over the last 2 years. So it was a compelling pitch, not only for ourselves, we kind of innately understood that this was a good idea, but it was also a compelling pitch we could make to others who bought into the idea enough that they would write checks. And in the beginning, those who write checks are not necessarily the big venture capital companies, but they're people like you. They're people that you know. They're your family and friends. And you may think, my family and friends don't have that much money, but you will be surprised. The people that you know are connected to folks who can help you get these things off the ground if you have a compelling pitch. And so realize that your plans may change along the way. Aim, third point I want to make to you today that I want you to remember, I call aim for the V. Now what's that mean? Aim for the V. So when you're canoeing, when you're rafting down a stream, and you're going fast, and there are boulders all around, you could hit those boulders and your canoe tips over. But in the water, you always know where to go you can watch the water, right? So you go where you aim. In that case, you aim for the V, you go through the rocks if they're there. If you're mountain biking, think about it. You're going down a hill fast on a mountain bike, you've got trees everywhere, you make the wrong choice, bam, you splat right into the tree. If you look at the tree, you will hit the tree every time. So what you do is you look for that little gap, right? You're going fast, you look for the gap, you hit the gap. You really go where you look. And as an entrepreneur, let me tell you something, there are lots of things that will blow you up. There's a lot more things that can destroy you than will actually help you succeed. Part of it is the team that you build. One of the most important decisions that you will make as an entrepreneur is, who are you sharing this dream with? Who are you bringing onto your team? And you will meet many people who will get very enthusiastic about what you're doing. Some of those people are the people you need on your team. Some of those people are the people who will, if you let them, blow up this dream that you have. And it is very difficult to tell in advance which is which, because they all look exactly the same on day one. I read a quote last week, actually, about General Marshall. And General Marshall, what he looked for in a leader when he promoted people in the military. And one of the things that he really looked for was optimism. He didn't want a calamity howler, because calamity howlers, he thought, were infectious and would actually damage the morale and the ability of an entire unit to perform well. And so one of the most important things for him in picking who would lead the divisions in the military was somebody who was optimistic. Now, I know a lot of folks would say don't be overly optimistic, but to be an entrepreneur, you do have to be very optimistic, and the people you have to work with have to be that way too. Because going down this road, there are many, many, many things that can blow you up. And there are some folks who will point each and every one of them out. And your vision, your ability to succeed as an entrepreneur is not by focusing on each of those things that can blow you up. Your job as an entrepreneur, given limited resources, which I can guarantee you will have limited resources, given limited time, because those limited resources fund only a certain amount of time that you exist. That's your window of opportunity. How much money do you have in the bank? What are you spending that money on? What's your burn rate, month in, month out? And you put those two things together, how long do you have? If I have $100,000 in the bank and I spend $25,000 a month, I have 4 months, unless I get more money, either through revenue or investment. That's it. And so when that is your life, you've got one thing to do. It's like going down the mountain on that mountain bike. You got to look for the gap, and you got to shoot for it. And not everything works out the way you expect. But if you're always looking for the solution, then you can actually succeed. And I'll give you an example that actually originated right here at the University of Texas, San Antonio. We met Corey and formed this relationship with the university and with Dr. Again. We're commercializing technology that was created at the University of Texas, San Antonio, in part in a search for funding. There is a process called the Emerging Tech Fund, which I think you'll hear about later today, in which the state of Texas will sometimes invest in companies that have partnerships with the university. And so as part of that process, you have to have a partnership with the university. We formed a partnership, we made a pitch, and asked for a whole lot of money from the state of Texas, and very confidently went and told a group of advisors who would make the decision exactly why we thought we had such a hit on our hands. And we were not selected. We didn't get the funds. We didn't get passed on. And potentially, at that point, we could have thrown our hands up and said, okay, we had this relationship with the university, that's it. We're going to go another direction. We don't need that. In reality, what that experience gave us was a relationship with the University of Texas, which it turned out was much more important than getting the funds from the Emerging Tech Fund, at that point in time at least. Because we continued to have this relationship without the funding, and we built that relationship into our plans. And we told other investors about this relationship that we had with the University of Texas at San Antonio. And so instead of dwelling on, oh my gosh, we tried to get something and we didn't get it, we dwelled on, look what we have, this is fantastic. And as a result, we ended up with incubator space here. As a result, as we got funding, we actually spent money first on the university by agreeing to pay, a certain amount per month for this relationship. And in return, we get an exclusive license from the university. So again, the goal is to focus on success. This actually led to a point where we are getting a grant. We're getting not a grant, we're getting an investment from the University of Texas. Now, that was totally unexpected. But they bought into the idea, I guess it's probably 2 years after we started a relationship. They bought into an idea, again, because they see, they're not giving us a gift, but they see the potential to get a profound return on investment. So my advice to you as folks setting out to build a company of your own is always, always, always focus on the pathway to success. Again, many things can blow you up. Your opportunity for success is relatively small, and if you hit that, if you look for that, you have the greatest chance to hit it. And finally, something that Corey said in his introduction, which I think is also very, very important, has been a driving force for us and makes it easy for us to sell this plan to folks, is passion. That you need to be passionate about what it is that you're building. And the way that you're passionate about it is, it's important. Believe it or not, I was in Silicon Valley a couple of days ago, listening to pitches and making a pitch for our company. And there are a lot of companies out there that build products that are not necessarily useful to the world. It's true. And I think if you are looking for a get-rich-quick plan, that your chances of getting rich quick are almost nil. I mean, that's something I would discourage, because being an entrepreneur is anything but easy. It's you read about the musician who's an overnight success, and they did a song and it became a massive hit. The story of old. It only took them 10 years to get there. And that's the same thing with an entrepreneur. Is you hear about the company that made it big, and you think it was created yesterday, and often there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years of groundwork that got them to that point. There are companies out there, and they get press, and so they might attract you. I went to TechCrunch, is this tech blog that gets a lot of attention throughout the world, and they throw these conferences, and one of them is called Disrupt, and they will invite some companies in and say, these are startups we want folks to notice, and there's actually a competition, and they do pick a winner. And we went to TechCrunch Disrupt about a year ago. We were selected as one of the sort of finalist companies and did not win. But that year, the company that did win was called Shaker. And Shaker was a sort of avatar-like deal that goes over Facebook and actually imitates, folks dancing, through a bar as they shake and meet friends in this, CGI environment that they've created. Shaker got $15 million, but today I'm actually Googling for it, and the last press I can find was about a year ago, in 2011, when they run TechCrunch Disrupt. It's hard to sell something that you don't really believe in. And for us, it's always been easy to talk about this company that we're building, Latakoo. In the beginning, it was because it was journalism. And we felt very, very, very strongly that journalism is important for democracy. And if journalism breaks down, democracy breaks down. And so we brought that kind of passion to it. Latakoo is a technology company, which still supports journalism. So we have that. But it's more than that, we realize. Because what Latakoo does is it makes it easy to send content, these real big files, from the ground up. Think about the way the internet is built right now. The internet is basically a consumption tool, right? I mean, it's a consumption service. It's easier to watch video than it is from the internet. It's easier to download a Netflix movie than it is to create a movie and upload it. And the reason is because the internet, there's at least 5 times more bandwidth coming down to you than there is going back up. And so that's fine if you're sending text or JPEGs or something relatively small, but if you're trying to send something relatively large, like a video file, you can't get it up there. And so the thing is, it works for big companies that have the resources to put their content up there for you to download. It doesn't work for independent individuals who want to produce content and maybe introduce the content into a marketplace where they can sell it and monetize it in some way. When we look at Latakoo, ultimately we think that we are democratizing the voices that can join this global conversation. Because if we make it easy for you to get content off that cell phone, and cell phones, if you think about it, they have fantastic cameras today, right? 1080p, high definition, 5 minutes of video on an iPhone creates a file that's 1 gigabyte in size. 1 gigabyte in size. Try getting a gigabyte of anything off that iPhone. It's almost impossible. And so if you shoot more than a few seconds of video, it stays on the phone, at least when you're out in a cellular environment. We have a tool that overcomes that barrier and now makes it possible for you to shoot 5 or 10 minutes, whatever, on your iPhone and zip it up to the internet. So that means that, yes, we're good for big corporations because we make it easier for big corporations like news companies to move content around, but we're also good for individuals. We're good for the content producer here at school at the University of Texas San Antonio to produce content, to move it into this conversation space, and to participate more fully. And so when I talk about that, I get all excited because I think that we're doing something of value. And my advice to you as entrepreneurs is be passionate. Make something important enough. Make something that changes the world enough that you can be really passionate about it. Because if you're really passionate about it, the chance is that you'll work really hard to make this thing happen and get it off the ground. And the chance is that you can actually sell it to investors, and the chance is that you can actually sell it to some individual who'll buy it and create a transaction. So that's very, very important. So again, you got to make the break from safety. You got to take the leap without a net. Your first vision may not be what you build, so be willing to pivot. Look for the pivot. Aim for success. Don't look at the things that can blow you up. Aim for that one little pathway that helps you build your company. And finally, build something important. Be passionate about it. And if you're passionate about it, that will drive everything else. That will actually drive you to success. So my position again is, if you really want to do something, best way to do it is to do it. Don't wait. If you put it off, well, how long do you put it off? For me, personally, I put it off for about 2 decades. I worked for about 2 decades before I became an entrepreneur. My only regret is not doing this 20 years earlier. And the benefit, of course, of taking this chance as an entrepreneur, showing up today, looking at an entrepreneurial life, and actually launching a company, the benefit is not necessarily the company that you're going to build. The benefit is the person you build. The benefit is you become a truly independent, confident person that believes that they can go out and actually change the world, and you'll know how to do it.